An unexpected and frightening conflict ensued at the tranquil fishing dock at Mountain Lake after what began as intimidation by an infamous biker gang. Surprisingly, one of the most dangerous Special Forces veterans was about to be confronted when the notorious Iron Serpent's motorcycle gang showed up to bother what they mistook for an innocent woman fishing alone. With 3 combat tours and innumerable life-or-death scenarios under her belt, Staff Sergeant Sarah Carter was ready to give these conceited motorcyclists a lesson they would never forget. Those who were there were shocked by what happened next, and it altered their lives in an irrevocable way. Sarah Carter skillfully organized her fishing gear among the lingering morning mist on Mountain Lake. She moved with precision, ensuring that every piece of equipment was in its proper place. Even on a tranquil morning of fishing, these behaviors had been deeply embedded in her during her 15 years of Special Forces training. With his worn tackle box swaying softly at his side, old Tom drew near. "Sarah, good morning. Today is the first day that the fish will bite." Seeing the Vietnam veteran who had taken on a paternal role in Sarah's life since she began visiting this location brought a real grin to her face. "Salutations, Tom. After you did the exercises I demonstrated, how is your shoulder feeling?" Tom responded as he prepared his equipment nearby, saying it was better than it had been in years. "The medicine used by the military is really useful. By the way, do you get any better sleep now?" Sarah's grin softened a little. "Although not every night is the same, this spot is helpful. Consider the water for a moment." The calm sound of the waves lapping against the dock posts, the infrequent splash of jumping fish, and the melodic songs of early morning birds filled the tranquil morning air. Sarah came here for this reason. The tranquility of Mountain Lake was the sole solace that appeared to ease the tempestuous mental storm that persisted following 3 tours and innumerable missions. Fresh coffee was carried down the dock by Jenny, who worked at the bait shop. "I was hoping you might find this useful." As she presented each of them with a hot cup, she mentioned that today was expected to be a lovely day. At that moment, the sound arrived, soft at first but gradually increasing in volume. Disrupting the tranquility of the morning was the rumble of numerous motorbikes, their engines intentionally set to a high volume. Recalling her years of battle training, Sarah's palm tightened slightly over her coffee cup, signaling that she was on high alert. "The Iron Serpents will be those." Tom lowered his voice and mumbled something. "Lately, they have been making a nuisance of themselves all around the lake. Acting as like they own the place, harassing everyone." 8 motorbikes, their chrome reflecting the morning light, pulled into the parking lot and Sarah observed them all. Wearing similar leather cuts, the riders bore the insignia of a coiled viper, poised to attack. The tall man at the front of the group dismounted first, his beard was neatly clipped, and his eyes were icy. The leader's announcement resounded over the port. "So, what exactly is this? These residents seem to be squandering a fantastic fishing area." A strong-willed man with a buzz cut for his second-in-command chuckled. "Perhaps we ought to demonstrate its correct usage to them, Logan." Other anglers started gathering their gear and nervously glanced at the motorcyclists. Sarah sat quietly drinking her coffee while keeping her trained eyes on the scenario. A group of 8 fit males, perhaps carrying blades. Logan, the leader, exuded an air of confidence befitting someone who seldom shied away from using threats and intimidation to achieve his goals. In a low voice, Sarah told Tom that he didn't have to remain. "We may be in for something intriguing here." Tom physically rejected the idea. "Young man, I was in Vietnam. Scared easily. Not me. Plus, you need someone to support you." A smile spread across Sarah's face as she kept her gaze fixed on the approaching motorcyclists. "Thank you for that, Tom, but I'm confident in my abilities." The motorcyclists dispersed along the dock, obstructing passage where it was not required. Logan paused close to Sarah, casting a mischievous glance her way. "What a lovely location you have here, my darling. Are you open to sharing?" Instead of looking up, Sarah continued to cast her line. "Lots of dock space available. Reduce the volume, you're startling the fish. Over the dock, a nervous stillness descended. With bated breath, the remaining fishermen observed. Logan's grin took on a sinister turn. I really doubt that you get the concept, lady. You run for cover the moment the iron serpents swoop in. At this point, Sarah did raise her head, locking eyes with Logan with the composed expression that comes from having dealt with far more formidable foes than he. In fact, she stated with a firm voice. It seems like you have no idea how this operates. You are disturbing a designated quiet zone on this public land that is maintained by the Parks Department. A large man known as Duke, one of the motorcyclists, approached her and kicked her tackle box on purpose. All across the wooden planks were fishing lures and gear. Oh no, he scowled. Seems like you missed your opportunity to relocate. Sarah rose slowly, her gait controlled and graceful. She adopted the posture of a skilled fighter, but the motorcyclists saw her as nothing more than a woman to be intimidated. She calmly stated that it was an error. With his towering stature, Logan inched closer to Sarah in an attempt to frighten her. Yeah, and my darling, what are you going to do to fix it? Sarah stood motionless, her speech exuding the calm authority of a commander accustomed to leading in a hostile environment. Gather that tackle box and apologize first. The next step is to either change locations or reduce the volume of your voices. You have those choices. The motorcyclists burst out laughing, but Mike Ghost Wilson, among them, paused for thought as he observed her posture. The sparkle of her dog tags under her jacket drew his attention. Excuse me, boss, Mike whispered. Too preoccupied with asserting his power, Logan paid him no mind. Arrest me, if you must. Just so you're aware, there are 9 of us and only one of you. 2, Tom stood at Sarah's side and raised his voice. Both of us, please. With a crack of his knuckles, Duke advanced. Please, old man, do not get wounded by getting involved. Sarah broke the tension with her voice. Allow me to reiterate this. Gather the gear box, make amends, and let's have a relaxing morning of fishing. Alternatively, what? With a scowl, Duke extended his hand to push her. The events that followed unfolded at a pace that was difficult for the majority of onlookers to keep up with. Duke reached out to touch Sarah, but she quickly spun around, grabbed his wrist, and launched him over her hip using his own momentum. The force of the landing on the dock knocked the wind out of Duke's lungs. Sarah got him in a joint lock with a precise and trained grasp before the other motorcyclists could react. Just as I mentioned, Sarah stated quietly, keeping the grasp without making any visible effort. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Mike rose to his feet, shields outstretched. Remain silent, my brethren. I am a veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division. We call those Ranger maneuvers. She's just amazing. Logan's expression shifted from bewilderment to understanding. The armed forces you command? Veteran of 3 tours as a combat medic, Staff Sergeant Sarah Carter served in the Special Forces. Duke, who was breathing and holding onto his arm, rolled away once she let go of him. How about we give it another go? On the dock, the vibe changed. Everything changed when Mike revealed something and Sarah showed it. Noticing his crew's uneasiness, Logan glanced at them before turning back to Sarah. Elite units? Logan's voice was no longer condescending. The Vietnam War was my grandfather's battle wounds. Then you ought to be more knowledgeable, Sarah remarked. De-escalation is the first step that we learn. Always use force as a last resort. A shift in Logan's countenance revealed the initial signs of sincere admiration. Take the tackle box from the woman, Duke. Although he was still rubbing his arm, Duke eventually complied and gathered up the strewn fishing gear. By their former bluster replaced by a combination of reverence and exhaustion, the remaining motorcyclists observed in quiet contemplation. Duke whispered with true shame in his voice, I'm sorry about your gear. Sarah accepted the apologies with a nod. Nobody got hurt. The dock is more than enough for everyone, as I mentioned before. Mike advanced in a manner distinct from the rest of the motorcyclists. Staff Sergeant, whose unit are you referring to, if it is okay with you? The 21st Group, Sarah said. You. Roughly 82. Had 2 stints in the Afghan War. In a somewhat amused expression, Mike shook his head. I should have known better than to act so angrily toward a fellow veteran. Logan observed this conversation with a more reflective demeanor than before. Even though he rarely discussed his time in the military, my dad always insisted that anyone could entrust their life to a special forces soldier. Sarah agreed with your father. Our purpose is to safeguard, not to frighten. Being strong is being aware of when to employ and when to avoid force. Other motorcyclists started to loosen up. They are becoming less combative. I was wondering where you're viewing from today before we return to the topic. Be sure to subscribe if you like these stories. Tomorrow's special episode is one you won't want to miss. Carefully bringing more coffee, Jenny, who had been anxiously observing from the bait shop, approached. Could someone else use a cup? With a little quiver in her voice, she extended the invitation. Logan glanced at his workers before returning his gaze to Sarah. Could we possibly join you? Some anecdotes on the service would be interesting to hear. In other words, if you're game to split the space on the dock, Sarah pointed to the available spots. Pick up some equipment in Jenny's store. Should you require additional lures, I possess a convenient supply. Tom drew nearer to Sarah as the motorcyclists scattered to retrieve fishing gear. Holy cow, that was insane, dude. That was entirely on you. Sarah kept her eyes wide open as she grinned. A better method to handle things can be demonstrated to them, and that can sometimes be the greatest approach to prevent a fight. Plus, if they are truly veterans' children, they ought to know the significance of this location to our family. The final remnants of the fog were burned away as the morning sun rose higher in the sky. The soft splash of fishing lines striking the sea drowned out the sound of motorbike motors. On that dock, something was starting to change, but nobody could quite put their finger on it just yet. An uncomfortable stillness had replaced the earlier strain. Logan sat down next to Sarah as the motorcyclists dispersed around the wharf. He had become calmer and more deliberate in his actions. While continuing to touch his arm, Duke would occasionally peek across at Sarah, his expression a mix of admiration and little shame. As he put up his borrowed fishing rod, Mike casually mentioned your technique. That was a direct translation from martial arts school. Precise implementation. Sarah shifted her line of speech and nodded. If you want to terminate a conflict quickly, sometimes it's better to damage your opponent and prove they can't win. My dad used to say something similar, Logan whispered. The most formidable fighters, he once stated before his death last year, are those who are adept at dodging danger. With the news hanging in the air, Logan's violent behavior was more understood. Sarah took a brief look at him before she spoke. The want to lash out or prove ourselves is a natural reaction to loss, but it betrays a lack of respect for their memory. Logan clenched his jaw, yet a glimmer of comprehension slipped into his gaze. He served in the Special Forces in Vietnam and rarely discussed his time there. However, in the past several months, he has begun to open up and has shared with me the things that have been troubling him. In response, Sarah's voice became softer. Things that are difficult to share with those who haven't been through it are things that we bring back with us. From his position, Tom gave a nod. I finally spoke about Vietnam after 30 years. On occasion, this doctor has served more as a counselor than a VA patient. As if taking note of what was being said, the other motorcyclists had become silent. Derek, who was second in charge under Logan, finally spoke up. Staff Sergeant, is finding tranquility your reason for coming here? Sarah watched her line and stated that the water helped. No assumptions, no evaluations. Nothing more than listening to the waves and being patient while you wait for a fish to bite. Suddenly, Duke, who had been noticeably silent, spoke out. He was a Marine, but my brother never returned from his last deployment. Since then, I suppose I've been furious." Sarah glanced over at him, perceiving the anguish hidden beneath his gruff demeanor. "It's simpler to be angry than to be sad, yet anger does nothing to help." From the bait store, Jenny emerged with additional coffee and sandwiches. She expressed concern that you could be hungry. A cautious familiarity supplanted her earlier apprehension. As the plates were handed around, the topic of discussion changed. As Mike recounted his experiences in the 82nd Airborne, other motorcyclists felt comfortable enough to do the same. Individuals from the same family who had served, including parents and siblings. "You know," Sarah remarked as she adjusted her delivery. "The community center is the meeting place for a veteran support group. For families as well as veterinarians. The kind of people who can relate to the experience of loving a soldier." Logan gave her a piercing stare. "We should go to therapy, right? I believe it's important for everyone to have someone who can relate," Sarah responded steadily. "That is the purpose of my visit. Thus, Tom visits this place. Admitting you have a burden too great to carry alone is sometimes the bravest thing you can do." In the middle of their intense concentration, a fish yanked on Duke's line. As he was not familiar with the motion, he had difficulty turning the reel. In an effort to prevent him from losing the fish, Sarah stepped in to show him the ropes. She made it easy. Being strong is not the point. Patience and technique are key. Allow the fish to exhaust itself. Everyone saw the connection. As soon as Duke complied with her orders, they began to reel in a base of respectable size. He may have smiled for the first time all morning when his face brightened with joy. Sarah congratulated him on his catch and helped him remove the hook. "Do you want to release it or retain it?" The Duke's gaze shifted from the fish to the water. "Probably just let it go. Giving it another go seems reasonable." The symbolic significance of the occasion was palpable as Duke delicately returned the base to the lake. As they observed, the other motorcyclists sensed a change in their shared comprehension. As Logan spoke, his voice betrayed his contemplation. "We've been making an appearance at this lake, causing disturbance, in an effort to establish our point. But perhaps we have been oblivious to the main idea." Sarah recast her line, this time with the ease and precision of an expert. "We miss out on opportunities to be truly powerful when we're too preoccupied with appearing strong." Gently, Derek bowed. "Just like your prior move with Duke. It was your choice not to harm him, even though you could have." "The point wasn't to cause him harm," Sarah clarified. "The purpose was to prevent the situation from getting worse. The greatest kind of triumph, as we discovered in battle, is one in which no one gets harmed." The dock was now alive with the sounds of fishing reels, occasional splashes, and soft talk as the morning had warmed up significantly. The leather cut of the motorcyclist appeared less menacing, more like a uniform in need of a fresh interpretation. "The veterans' ride is next month," Staff Sergeant Mike announced all of a sudden. "Bringing in funds for the VA Medical Center. If you're interested in helping us plan it, maybe you could transform it into something significant." Sarah pondered Mike's proposal while maintaining her gaze fixed on the lake. "Experienced driver. Give me the rundown." With a sudden burst of energy, Logan moved forward. "We repeated year. Unfortunately, the focus has been more on displaying bikes than providing meaningful assistance to veterans. Perhaps we have been going about it all wrong." Duke, as usual, mumbled something while listening intently while maintaining his focus on his fishing line. According to Sarah, the VA hospital might benefit from more than simply financial assistance. Veterans are in need of volunteers who can empathize with their struggles. Those who are able to maintain a constant presence. From his position, Tom interjected. "The medical center included. Many local veterinarians are in need of assistance with routine tasks. Domestic maintenance, getting to and from appointments. Sometimes all you need is a friend to chat to." Cars passed each other on the road. In their imaginations, a new mission is taking shape. With his elbows resting on his knees, Derek leaned forward. He assured me that we have the workforce. Occupied the motorcycles. Provide consistent transportation for veterinarians to their appointments. Capable of performing routine maintenance as well. Added a second motorcyclist who went by the name of Wrench. Using tools effectively is something the majority of us are capable of. Have been producing more problems than solutions, squandering my abilities. There was an affirmative nod from Sarah. For real strength, that is what it takes. Rather than bringing other people down, use your resources to help them rise. Logan remained silent for a while before speaking in a low voice. Uncle Bob. Prior to his passing, he consistently expressed regret for not doing more to assist his brothers following Nam. Many of them, it was said, battled their battles alone. After all these years, Sarah assured him that it's never too late to carry on his legacy by fulfilling his dreams. Gently but firmly, her voice spoke. Jenny moved closer after standing nearby and listening. Donations might be collected at the bait shop. Many veterans have passed through this area before. As the sun rose higher in the sky, it reflected off the lake like a diamond. The dock has evolved into something more than a mere fishing location. It was becoming a site of metamorphosis. Are you aware of any other options we have? Oh no, Duke exclaimed out of nowhere. We could show children how to fish. There are a lot of children whose parents are serving overseas. Offer them a stable, tranquil object. The man who had attempted to frighten Sarah only hours before now was showing true excitement, and Sarah couldn't help but smile. An excellent suggestion, indeed. Consistency and the virtue of patience it imparts. Sometimes it helps people tremendously. Mike gave a hearty nod in agreement. Maybe team up with the nearby military installation. Prepare for recurring gatherings. Instead of instilling terror, iron serpents are striking back. Could use a different moniker. As Logan studied the insignia on his cut, he pondered. Community service isn't exactly a hallmark of iron serpents. Experts in steel, Derek proposed. Be strong, but be sure it serves a reason. Everyone in the group seemed to get the concept. The more reserved members were also nodding in agreement as they perceived a fresh path for their fraternity. No problem, Sarah chimed in as she checked the bait by pulling in her line. This necessitates that you acquire the skill of fishing correctly. You can't possibly educate children without first mastering the subject. Everyone was taken aback by Duke's sincere laughter. The staff sergeant is volunteering to instruct us. Sarah responded with a hint of a smile, saying it could be arranged. You may have to prove yourself worthy of it following that tackle box event. From the tense confrontation earlier, the atmosphere had changed drastically. Instead of being aggressive, the bikers were now enthusiastically discussing ways they could help their local communities. Logan glanced over at Sarah and remarked, "You know, we felt like we were the tough ones as we rode up here this morning. What a paradox that you can be so mistaken." Sarah said that there are various sorts of strength. Among the Special Forces members I knew, the strongest individuals weren't necessarily the most capable fighters. They possessed the unique ability to unite individuals, transforming adversaries into friends. Tom nodded along as he observed the conversation. He claimed to have fished from this dock for 3 decades. To think that a group of bikers might one day organize volunteer work instead of spreading mayhem is beyond my wildest imagination. Things change, Sarah declared as she cast her line once more. Sometimes all it takes is a little guidance to help someone realize their full potential. When asked what should come first, Mike pulled out his phone and indicated that we should meet with the VA coordinator. There's a contact of mine who's been pushing for increased volunteerism. There was an affirmative nod from Sarah. Go for it, that's a good move. Demonstrates your commitment to the transformation. It appeared as though Logan was uneasy as he ran his fingers through his hair. Think they'll give us the seriousness we deserve? Behold, we are here. Our reputation as reliable community volunteers isn't exactly a shining light. In response, Sarah adjusted her delivery to emphasize that deeds speak louder than words. Get in the habit of regularly showing up. Remain faithful, and everything else will fall into place seamlessly. Finally, Duke, who had been thinking deeply, raised his voice. My brother volunteered at the VA before his most recent deployment. He said it kept him grounded and reminded him of the reason he served. According to Sarah, it does. Assistance to other people. All the hardships we endured have meaning now. The challenging sections take on more significance. Jenny came over bearing a new pot of coffee. The local Veterans Alliance is headed by my uncle, you know. I could phone him and inform him of your ride arrangements. Derek stood up straight. How wonderful. Perhaps if we work together, we might make it a more significant and grand occasion. A previously silent motorcyclist now spoke up as the group proceeded with their plans. His occupation is construction, he explained. Hammer was revealed by his cut. I may have an entire crew ready to assist veterans with their house repairs. Absolutely, Sarah gushed. We are in dire need of that type of resource. Personnel, resources, and expertise will all go toward aiding the armed forces. Tom gave a wise nod. Some of the senior veterans in the area live alone. Doesn't have the energy to do household chores. A disparity of that magnitude is possible. Someone vigorously pulled on Logan's line, cutting off their communication. Sarah intervened just in time to stop him from jerking the rod. Simple, she said. Consistent, gentle force. Give the fish time to exhaust itself on its own. Following her instructions, Logan focused intently on his face. They landed the spectacular foundation after a few minutes of careful play, and Sarah helped him unhook it. Logan fixed his attentive gaze on the fish. You know, he whispered softly. My dad often brought up the topic of fishing. He expressed a desire to instruct me, but I was preoccupied with projecting an image of superiority and being aggressive. Sarah presented him with the fish. Learning is a lifelong pursuit. Consider releasing it. With a gentle descent, Logan returned the base to the water, signaling his approval. They beheld it scuttle away. The weight of the moment exceeds that of a single caught fish. Staff Sergeant, Mike interrupted the deep hush. Hey, would you be interested in advising us? Can you please assist us in getting this set up? Duke spoke up before Sarah could get a word in. It would be formalized by us. The dock is now trouble-free. If Jenny and Carl are fine with it, this would be our base of operations. A grin spread across Jenny's face as she smiled. It seems reasonable to me as long as you maintain purchasing bait and coffee. Sarah saw the gathering of motorcyclists and saw the sincere yearning for transformation on their expressions. At last, she did say it, but with one condition. Name it, Logan quickly said. You mastered the art of fishing. Everyone here. No gimmicks, no quick cuts. You mastered the art of being patient and mindful of the water. The motorcyclists looked at each other and nodded. Yes, Logan declared. I don't think anyone would dare take shortcuts after what you did to Duke. Everyone, even Duke, started laughing at this. More frequent fishermen were beginning to show up at the dock as the morning warmed up. The motorcyclists' presence didn't seem to frighten them, on the contrary, they seemed intrigued by the strange assembly. Sarah continued, her voice growing increasingly solemn. This transformation you're describing must be genuine. There will be no slacking off or reverting to old ways of doing things when times get rough. These war heroes would be an asset. Their experiences have been sufficient. Additional letdowns are unnecessary for them. Logan maintained eye contact with her. I believed being tough meant instilling terror in others when my father passed away, Staff Sergeant. Today, I discovered the true meaning of toughness. Nothing will disappoint you. The pier fell into a soothing quiet as the fishermen got back to their craft. A tranquil ambience seemed to invite contemplation as the steady cadence of casting lines and soft waves set the mood. Duke eventually broke the silence with a surprising inquiry. What was it like serving as a female Special Forces member, Staff Sergeant? Sarah was thoughtful in her response, pausing to consider her words. Being a male or a woman was irrelevant. As a combat medic or member of the Special Forces, it was all about fitting in. You need fighting and healing skills, and sometimes you need both at once. Similarly, Mike noted today. Without harming him, you defeated Duke and then taught him how to fish correctly. Struggle and recovery. With true curiosity, Logan leaned forward. There was no mention of female operators by my grandpa. Surely things have evolved since his day. The world is always evolving, Sarah said. However, the fundamentals remain unchanged. Those who are vulnerable should be shielded. Challenge bullies. Boost the strength of others around you. After remaining silent for some time, Derek broke his silence. We originally formed the Iron Serpents with the idea that strength and camaraderie were our guiding principles. However, we have been making a mistake, haven't we? Not at all, Sarah remarked. Simply misguided. Being feared by others is not a measure of true strength. When they're down, you should pick them up. Jenny came back with sandwiches and settled down to join in on the discussion. She spoke to Sarah in the same way that you helped her brother. After his return from Iraq, he was taught how to fish. He benefited much from it. With a newfound fascination, the motorcyclists turned to Sarah. It seems like you've been at this for quite some time. Logan, what do you think? Supporting those who have served their country. Emilia gave a subtle nod in agreement. Following service, everyone requires a purpose. It was taken from me. The fishing, the dock. It's soothing enough to let thoughts drift, yet stimulating enough to keep negative ones at bay. Duke moved awkwardly. Those more sinister ideas? He was my brother's. Prior to it, his speech became unfinished as he faltered. Sarah stated emphatically that this is why our plans are crucial. Knowing someone is concerned can be enough at times. Someone gets it. Sometimes all you need is a destination. Maintaining a consistent routine might be a game changer. Mike got out a notepad and started jotting down some thoughts. Thus, we must arrange this in a suitable manner. Veteran fishing sessions on a regular basis. We provide transportation to and from VA appointments. Residential repair teams. Is there anything more we should cover? Support groups, Tom proposed. Not a therapeutic program. Just two war heroes chatting it up. Everything we need isn't always there. As well as their families, Duke murmured. The bereaved, like me. Everyone needs help. Thoughts kept coming. The enthusiasm of the group grows with every proposal. Hammer, who is usually the most reserved, offered some suggestions regarding how veterans could learn building skills. He also mentioned that it could work for finding a job. There are a lot of building firms on the hunt for trustworthy employees. The metamorphosis unfolded before Sarah's eyes. Instead of coming to threaten, these men were already plotting ways to help the locals. It brought back the memories of her initial motivation for joining the Special Forces. So that we can have an impact. To guide those around us to their destination. Are you aware of any other options we have? According to Jenny's suggestion. Establish a weekly morning meal at the dock. Prior to beginning the fishing trip. Let individuals have an opportunity to meet. Tell tales. Cookouts are also an option, Derek said. Let it truly be a communal affair. Excitedly, Logan sprang to his feet and began to pace. Rides to deliver goods to homebound vets could be organized. For once, let's put our bikes to good use. With some contemplation, Duke mentioned the leather cuts. We may use them to establish ourselves as trustworthy veterans instead of intimidating others. Someone to whom they can summon assistance. Seeing the true change happening made Sarah happy. We really need that kind of thinking. Make all the scary things into something inviting. Tom sat back and laughed. I never imagined that a group of motorcyclists would be so excited about organizing a community service project. According to Sarah, you never know who you might meet. They require occasional jolts to get them moving again. Regardless of whether it's an arm lock or any other kind. Even though he was beaming, Duke stroked his arm dramatically. Having a Special Forces veteran hand us our butts was the best thing that could have happened to us because it opened our eyes. As the morning tide carved its way toward the dock, a sleek blue base boat made her way over the surface. The captain was Carl, who was also the dock manager. While conducting his daily lake check, he had been seeing the unusual gathering from a distance. As he secured his boat, a look of both intrigue and lingering apprehension crossed his face. Sarah, is everything well here? With his eyes darting anxiously across the motorcycle bunch, he spoke out. Sarah gave a comforting nod. Absolutely fine, Carl. Actually, we should probably talk about how to use the pier for veteran outreach events. Evidently taken aback by this turn of events, Carl arched an eyebrow. Are these guys causing you any problems? Duke stated, with an undertone of embarrassed pride, that it is no longer the case. Here, Staff Sergeant Carter demonstrated an improved method. Logan got to his feet and approached Carl with a new sense of self-assurance. Friendlier, less combative. An apology is due to your dock and your people from us. As of today, we will no longer be a source of trouble. After giving him a brief examination, Carl cast an inquisitive glance toward Sarah. Some of the strain was lifted from his shoulders when she gave him a subtle nod. Well, Carl remarked while rubbing his brow. Theoretically, it's fair to give someone a chance. Can you tell me the nature of the programs we're discussing? Sarah picked up on a small change in the group's body language as Logan and Mike started to discuss their thoughts to Carl. The motorcyclists seemed to have already started to alter their demeanor in response to their renewed feeling of purpose. They were sat up straight and spoke more clearly. Mike suggested that we begin by offering veterans weekly fishing sessions. Under Staff Sergeant Carter's watchful eye, correct procedures would be taught. As a means to ease back into civilian life, I guess. Not to mention, transportation would be provided, as Derek swiftly added. In a regular basis, many veterinarians are unable to reach this area. As he leaned on his boat, Carl listened intently. It has been on my to-do list to replace a few of these old boards, and Doc could use some TLC. Hammer chimed in to say that we can lend a hand. Could transform this space into something extraordinary with my abilities and the resources at my disposal. A real refuge for veterans, Tom chimed in. More organized than what some of us have experienced previously. Jenny came out of the bait store with a stack of papers and a mug of coffee. We should probably start putting some of these thoughts down on paper. Put it in writing. With anticipation mounting, the group sat down at one of the picnic tables, and Sarah observed as they began to sketch out their ideas. It was happening more quickly than she had anticipated, but the change from threatening gang to community service group was real. Sarah chimed in to say that we should also consider safety. Making my way over to sit down with them. Psychological and physical impairments will be challenges for some of these service members. We must ensure that the doctor has the necessary equipment. Hammer recommended the possibility of installing more effective lighting. Facilitate fishing in the wee hours of the morning and late at night. Duke surprised everyone with his insightful addition about railings. Just before he died away, my brother spoke about how some of his injured comrades had a terrible time maintaining their footing on docks. In agreement, Carl gave a nod. I have wanted to make those upgrades for a long time. I simply never had the time or means to do it. After all, you have both now, Logan boasted. Which one is the Steel Viper? Not at all, the Iron Veterans are ready to help you out. Sarah beheld Mike frantically pecking away at his notepad. Is something in particular occupying your time? She inquired. His response was a mission statement, and he didn't once glance up. It should be able to convey our goals here. Choose if we're going to succeed or fail at this. We must have a distinct goal in mind. Looking over his shoulder, Jenny observed. Consider adding a section on how to put one's strength to use for the benefit of others. As he jotted it down in his notes, Mike deemed it perfect. We're doing precisely that, aren't we? Using all the tools at our disposal to empower ourselves rather than oppress others. While Logan was reeling in a fish, Sarah sprung into action to assist him in reeling it in. She noticed that he was already putting into practice the patience she had taught him earlier as they collaborated. She reassured you that you're making progress. The motions are lovely, fluid. Allow the fish to exhaust itself. They quickly caught a decent-sized bass because Logan focused on his technique. The look of pride on his face as he raised it was reminiscent of the many times she had witnessed veterans' faces light up when they had discovered something significant to concentrate on. His words came as he delicately removed the hook. This would have been perfect for my dad. Everything we have in mind for our time here, not only the fishing. Can you imagine the pride on his face? Sarah maintained eye contact with him. I believe Dad would be pleased with the guy you are making yourself into at this very moment. Logan blinked quickly and averted his gaze as the comment struck close to home. Duke, who was suddenly quite engrossed in checking his line, feigned not to notice. Carl, who had been attentively taking notes, raised his voice once more. Over by the dock, there's an abandoned boathouse, you know. We can solve it if you guys are serious about this program. I've been using it for storage. Create an appropriate gathering place for veterans. More enthusiasm was aroused by the proposal. Upon receiving Mike's notes, Hammer wasted no time in determining the scope of the renovation, and Derek wasted no time in drawing out a preliminary plan. Could install a little kitchen, Jenny proposed. Regarding those breakfasts we deliberated. Also, a peaceful room, as Sarah reminded. Having a quiet spot to themselves might help veterans relax and unwind. Tom firmly indicated with a nod. Also, those unofficial support groups could benefit from it. Would prefer not to meet at the VA facility. While Sarah was busy making plans, she realized that the sun had risen quite a bit. Now that the morning's tension had subsided, there was an air of genuine friendship and focused intensity. With an uncharacteristically solemn tone, Staff Sergeant Duke spoke abruptly. Much obliged. Because you showed us a better way to use our strength and because you refrained from injuring me earlier when you could have. That's what I learned from my time in the Special Forces, Sarah said. Sometimes, the most physically formidable fighters aren't the best. They are masters at converting foes into friends. With each new proposal, the group's enthusiasm grew, and they continued planning far into the morning. Unexpectedly, what had begun as an altercation had evolved into the launch of a sincere effort to assist their neighborhood. Now that it was high in the sky, the sun was reflecting off the lake, making patterns that shimmered. An increasing number of regular fishermen started showing up to the dock, and their reactions to the crowd were a mixture of shock and intrigue. Something was missing from the atmosphere, replacing the customary anxiety that would accompany a motorcyclist's presence. Observing the expressions, Sarah proposed that we should probably introduce ourselves correctly. Make it clear that the shift is happening. Logan stood up after giving a nod. He went over to a couple who had just come with their gear, making an effort to not look aggressive. Sunrise, he proclaimed, his voice inviting. Although we have been known to cause problems in the past, that is beginning to change. Here, we're collaborating with Staff Sergeant Carter to make this spot unique for veterans. The man finally spoke up after the pair exchanged looks. This is my son's third tour of duty in Afghanistan. Afterwards, you're more than welcome here, Logan responded earnestly. For military families as well, we are establishing programs. Nobody deserves to be left behind while their loved ones serve. Her face became more gentle. That sounds really fantastic. Deployments are particularly isolating. Duke, who had been eavesdropping, decided to get in. My brother served in the Marines but never returned. Therefore, I comprehend the concepts of waiting and anxiety. Perhaps we can be of mutual assistance. The pair were swayed by the sincerity in Duke's speech. They set their shop close by and quickly became involved in the continuing debate about dock upgrades. After another visit to the bait store, Jenny reappeared, this time accompanied by Carl and a laptop. Announced the discovery of some grant applications. Veterans programs have access to available funds. The documentation is all that remains. A sudden jolt went through Mike. I wrote grants while serving in the Army. One of my administrative responsibilities. Allow me to examine it. Sarah made note of Derek's silent, contemplative seat as Mike went over the applications. Taking a seat next to him, she shifted. Got anything on your thoughts? Derek paused, then spoke in a low voice. Considered my sister recently. She is currently deployed, my fellow Marines. It's been all I can do to pretend to be tough lately. I should have been more present for her kids. Sarah said that it was still possible to make the modification. Children persevere. Bring out the proud uncle in them. Perhaps they could go fishing with us. With a smile on his face, Derek made the suggestion. Instead of seeing their uncle as a troublemaker, they could learn something constructive. From his position, Tom interjected. Might establish a dedicated program for children of service members. Get them started fishing. Provide children with a stable environment while their parents are away. The concept piqued the interest of all. Hammer gladly set down his coffee cup and nodded. Might construct a kid-only pier. Make it easier to use and less dangerous. Considering the railings we discussed earlier, Duke chimed in. Additionally, perhaps some seating for the parents to observe. While at the docks, Carl carefully examined the layout. Might be effective. Close to the boathouse is the shallow spot. Ideal location for instructing young minds. Even on a napkin, Logan had begun to draw. The children would adore it if it took the form of a boat. According to Jenny, you should fill it with little fish. Allow them to catch anything more easily. Raise their self-assurance. Sarah was astounded by the group's rapid transition from fear to creativity as she observed the thoughts flowing. She noted that you were all experts. Organizing, planning, and considering the needs of others. Perhaps it was in us from the start. Look up, Mike said, raising his gaze from the grant proposals. All we needed was a demonstration on how to utilize it correctly. As soon as they stepped onto the dock, a family with 2 small children began to point toward the parked motorcycles. Rather than being afraid, the bikers saw a chance for adventure. In a loving smile, Duke rose to his feet. Want to know how to fish? Come on, youngsters. We are all being taught by Staff Sergeant Carter here. When Sarah went up, her composed demeanor put the parents at ease. She went on to say that they were establishing a community initiative. Accompanying military parents on deployment while they teach their children. Could you possibly lend us a hand as we try out some ideas? The children's expressions changed to one of pure delight, and their parents nodded after a little pause. In little time at all, everyone was pitching in to teach the kids how to fish. Duke and Derek helped the kids how to cast by steadying the rods. Mike had everyone in stitches with tales of his own amateur fishing endeavors, while Logan showed them how to properly use bait. See that? Tom whispered to Sarah. A complete turnaround in the span of a single morning, from miscreants to educators. As Sarah watched Duke carefully demonstrate the proper way to check a girl's line, she gave a head nod. Changing one's focus might sometimes bring out one's genuine nature. Everyone was beaming with joy when the little girl caught her first fish and let out a cry of excitement. Duke helped her delicately unhook the little fish while beaming with pride, as if he had caught it himself. "Is tomorrow a good day to return?" With her borrowed fishing rod in her clutches, the youngster begged her parents. In fact, as Logan sought Sarah's permission, he said, "We intend to schedule frequent meetings. Is the idea of becoming our first official student appealing to you?" The parents, who seemed to calm down as they observed the friendly exchanges, were very enthusiastic in their agreement. As it happened, Mom is a web designer, so she jumped at the chance to lend a hand making the program's website. You see. Once the family departed, Sarah informed the gathering. Here is the way a community is formed. Bringing people together, one nice deed at a time. While we were on the subject of community, Carl cut in. A conversation with the Parks and Recreation Department just ended. Our veterans program has piqued their curiosity. It would be great to meet next week to talk about funding. Even more, the gang was energized by the news. Mike re-engaged with the grant applications with a fresh sense of purpose. However, Hammer and his brothers, who were more interested in building things, started compiling extensive lists of everything that would be required to upgrade the pier. "Did you get the meaning of this?" Logan spoke up. His voice exuded determination. "We must arrange ourselves. Very well structured. Forget about feigning toughness. We are now genuinely responsible for something. A proper framework is required first." While arranging his documents, Mike spoke. "Mission success requires well-defined responsibilities and strong leadership." There was an affirmative nod from Sarah. "Accuracy required for military use. We really require that." After surveying his crew, Logan turned to Sarah. "Could you, Staff Sergeant, think about taking on the role of our official advisor? Please assist us in getting this set up correctly. Maintain our progress." "I can do that," Sarah said. "Keep in mind that the program is all yours. It's ultimately up to you, I'll just be a guide." After his conversation with the kids, Duke became particularly thoughtful, so he spoke out. "We should form committees. Functions of the program are handled by several teams." Sarah agreed that it was a good idea. "How can we best divide up our time?" The assembly drew nearer. As they started to plan their new mission, their enthusiasm grew. Derek proposed the transportation group, making transportation arrangements for disabled veterans. Hammer also mentioned the maintenance team. Maintain the condition of the dock and boathouse. Take care of remodeling. Outreach group, Mike went on to say. Manage interactions with veteran groups and the VA. Jenny got up from her seat and joined in right away. The children's program also requires a team. Coordinating with schools and military families is someone's job. With a focused expression on his face, Logan meticulously recorded every detail. How about the actual fishing lesson? Before we can instruct others, we must first receive adequate training. That is nothing I can't manage, Sarah assured me. However, dedication is required. There is more to learning how to fish correctly than simply technique. Patience, reverence for the water, and familiarity with the ecosystem are key. The same way we're learning everything else. Subtly, Duke watched. Tom, who was nodding along, chimed in with his 2 cents. I also require assistance in coordinating with nearby businesses. Raise funds for necessary equipment and foster community support. With the help of someone to manage the paperwork, Mike mentioned. Financial aid, policy paperwork, and insurance. The administrative side must be addressed in order for a program to be run properly. Carl brought up a valid argument. Is safety not an issue? Not to cause problems, but to avert it. The dock must be kept secure for all users. Realizing the irony, the motorcyclists looked at each other. They had caused problems before, and now they were going to stop them. According to Sarah, that's ideal. Channel your natural tendency to shield others into a constructive endeavor. Keep the object from being disturbed and watch over it. Slowly, Logan nodded. Whoever causes difficulties thinks like us. Improves our ability to identify possible issues. And handling things in a professional manner, Sarah emphasized with conviction. Abolish all forms of coercion. Could also collaborate with the police in the area. It was Mike's suggestion. Instead of avoiding people, create ties with them. It was astounding to see how their thinking had changed. They were transforming their once menacing aura into something beneficial in every way. Where do we stand with the veterans personally? Jenny inquired. If we claim to be catering to their requirements, how can we verify that we are? Sarah said that the meetings were regular. Establish a board of advisors for veterans. Instead of assuming we know what they need, we should ask them. All of a sudden, Duke became uneasy. But what about the more sinister aspects? Things like post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, the ones that consumed my brother. The assembly descended into a profound stillness. Sarah took a little pause before answering. Therein lies the critical importance of the community we are constructing. Having a safe space and supportive people around can make a world of difference at times. But we also need training so that people know where to get experts if they need it. Perhaps work in tandem with counselors, as Mike proposed. Keep it informal, less stuffy than a clinical atmosphere, but make sure they're available during our activities. In an effort to jot down every single idea, Logan was now writing at a breakneck pace. He stated that we should have a mission statement. Something that clarifies our true nature. Jenny proposed strength in service. That's the person you're becoming into. Tom expanded by saying that veterans aiding veterans and their families. Observing the real change taking place, Sarah watched as they worked. They had come to terrorize, but now these men were plotting ways to help their community with the same ferocity they'd brought when they came. How does our reputation fare? In a flash, Derek inquired. Will the leather cuts and bikes put folks off? According to Sarah, it won't if we utilize it correctly. Younger veterans may be enticed by the bikes. Instead of being seen as a sign of aggression, the cuts in the leather can represent protection. How you come across is crucial. Duke proposed that we rework the logo. Keep the snake, but change its focus from danger to wisdom. The snake and the medical emblem, according to my brother, stood for recovery. Sarah nodded, indicating the rod of Asclepius. Historically significant as a medical emblem. I could integrate that into your upcoming design. Suggestions kept piling up, one after the other. Now that we were past the confrontation from earlier, we were filled with genuine energy and intentional preparation. Is there anything more we might use? Jenny said. Every morning, I have my coffee. Allow everyone an opportunity to mingle and share stories before the fishing begins. Are barbecues also an option? Hammer was also present. Let it truly be a communal affair. Mike also recommended instituting a mentoring program. Reunite seasoned veterans with more junior staff. Facilitate their change. Carl, who had been watching in silence, eventually set up. For the past 2 decades, I have presided over this pier. This is the most change I've ever seen. This has the potential to be exceptional. The light had risen, and Sarah could see that morning was nearly over. There was optimism and potential, though, rather than the customary post-confrontation stress she had felt after combat. Sergeant, Logan stated with an air of seriousness. This morning, when we rode up here, we believed we were demonstrating strength. You exemplified true strength for us. Several trucks pulled up to the port, disrupting the tranquil morning planning. While the motorcyclists stiffened up out of habit, Sarah kept her composure. She clarified that those would be the regulars that come in on weekends. Ideal chance to begin altering perspectives. A handful of fishermen got out of their boats, their faces showing initial signs of fear at seeing the motorcyclists. The intimidating ways of the iron serpents were nothing new to many. Logan straightened his back and got to his feet. As he approached the newcomers, he decided it was time to start making amends. With her mediator skills at the ready, Sarah trailed behind. "Good morning, everyone." With an intentionally soft voice, Logan yelled out. "Please accept my utmost apologies for the trouble we've created on this site in the past. We are collaborating with Staff Sergeant Carter to transform this space into a Veterans Outreach Center, so we are making some adjustments." One of the fishermen eventually moved forward after exchanging suspicious looks with the others. He identified himself as Bill Reynolds. Served for 20 years in the United States Navy. Is this change really going to happen? Extremely grave. Duke chimed in and sat down with them. Thanks to the staff sergeant, we were roused from our slumber this morning. Showed us what real strength looks like. After a brief examination, Bill turned to Sarah. "Sarah, these boys are telling you the truth." She affirmed that they are. "A better way to go is sometimes all it takes." Bill slowly nodded. "Veteran support programs are something I'm familiar with. Personally, I've run a couple through the VFW. Perhaps our paths would cross." When Bill and his pals showed up to the planning session, they immediately put everyone at ease by offering fresh ideas and viewpoints. The dock was starting to get busy, yet there was a feeling of optimism about the future. "Are you aware of our true requirements?" As they settled into the conversation, Bill made a suggestion. "For veterans with disabilities, a suitable boat. A solid, readily available option." Hammer's expression changed. "I could adapt a pontoon boat so that it is accessible for wheelchairs and install specific seats. That could be handled by my construction crew," another buddy of Bill said. Similar adjustments have been made to accommodate those with disabilities. The partnership was expanding naturally as new members brought their expertise and networks to the table. With everyone's notes and contact details flying about, Jenny felt overwhelmed. "Look at what's going on." "Logan," Sarah whispered. "For real, this is how a community functions. All participants contributing their unique qualities." Duke and Bill were discussing the specifics of the boat's modifications as Logan looked on. Although Mike and another veteran were discussing methods for writing grants. All the things we believed made us strong turned out to be the things that prevented us from reaching our full potential. The key to strength, according to Sarah, is constructing bridges, not walls. I'm impressed by how quickly you're picking that up. As the two were speaking, a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot. Sarah put up a hand, and the motorcyclists relaxed once more. "Give it to me." Stepping out of her cruiser, Officer Sarah Collins warily approached the dock. The sight that unfolded before her was unsettling, despite the fact that she had received calls regarding the existence of the iron serpents. "Sarah, is everything well here?" Her query came as her fingers relaxed on her belt. Sarah assured her, was more than all right. A campaign to reach out to veterans is actually in the works. When it comes to steel, the serpents are evolving into the veterans. Whole change. In her observation of the assembled company, Sarah arched an eyebrow. Rather of the normal mayhem caused by the motorcyclists, she observed individuals deeply involved in thoughtful conversation, exchanging coffee and thoughts. "Does this really exist?" "Logan?" she inquired directly. He stared at her unwaveringly. "Thank you, ma'am. We are now aware of our mistake. To Staff Sergeant Carter, I am grateful. Interested in resolving the issue? Instead of frightening the community, use our strength to help it. Police assistance would be helpful," Mike said swiftly. "Perhaps work in tandem with your existing community service initiatives." As they detailed their strategies, Sarah listened attentively, her initial professional mistrust fading into a cautious confidence. "Finally, we've been trying to figure out how to help our veteran community," she said. Perhaps this will hold my attention. Sarah also proposed that this could aid in fostering confidence between police and veterans. Even after serving their country, many veterans find it difficult to accept and follow orders. Officers' constructive involvement could be the key to closing that gap. Sarah retrieved her journal. I shall consult with my sergeant. We may be able to lend a hand, particularly with regard to security training and events. Jenny came over with a new pot of coffee as Sarah joined the planning group. I never imagined I'd see the day when police and bikers work together at my dock, she told Sarah. That, Sarah said, is the strength of a well-defined purpose. If you give others an opportunity to help, they will impress you. As the morning progressed, other opportunities presented themselves. Regarding the requirements of veterans, Bill's organization offered knowledgeable viewpoints. Sarah chimed in with insightful remarks regarding safety and community policing. With each new proposal, the motorcyclists' enthusiasm appeared to increase even more. Why isn't PTSD awareness a priority? While talking about training, Sarah inquired. Veterans in crisis have presented us with some challenging scenarios. Having someone to lean on in times of need could be life-changing. Certainly, Duke nodded. Some of us can relate to that. Those invisible wounds took my brother's life. Assuming we are able to assist in avoiding that fate for another individual. According to Sarah, we could set up training sessions. Raise awareness of the warning signals. Understand the proper way to react. Involve families as well. They're usually the ones who pick up on changes first. Out came Bill's phone. The VA has introduced me to several great trainers. Most likely, they would be happy to lend a hand in launching a program. The conversation carried on. Every subject expands upon the previous one. Develop an all-encompassing strategy to garner community backing. What began as an altercation was quickly turning into something completely unexpected. A genuine shift in focus. Dark clouds started to form over the lake as afternoon drew near, bringing a refreshing wind in their wake. The expanding gathering remained together in the bait shop, where Jenny had made room for all of them, rather than dispersing. Our signal has always been the weather, Sarah elucidated, keeping an eye on the sky. It is the perfect time to wrap up fishing and finalize your preparations. Standing inside the store, Logan addressed the gathered multitude, appearing less like a gang boss and more like a leader. Sure, I'd like to formally announce this. So far, what do you think, Mike? Before continuing, Mike looked over his notes, now running into multiple pages. Letters of intent have been received from Bill's VFW post. Agent Collins to assist with law enforcement. Hits building crew with hammer. Our headquarters were offered the bait shop by Jenny's. Remember to include Carl's boathouse. Included Duke. We'll be focusing on that renovation mostly. The police officer Sarah put up her hand. My sergeant texted me a few minutes ago. He would like to meet tomorrow to talk about how the department can back this project. Going quickly, Sarah noted. I am pleased. Gaining momentum is crucial for every endeavor. Logan looked over to his team and gave a silent nod. Hey guys, we have one more opportunity to bail now. Starting now, we're dedicated to making a difference. A halt to the threats. That was a breeze. Something better is emerging from us. Cars passed each other on the road. Duke then got to his feet. Brother of mine. He began. A quiver in his voice. Go ahead of him. Prior to his departure. I could do more, he claimed time. And time again. Then there's this. Count me in. Individually, the others rose to their feet, reiterating their dedication. Ghost, who is always the most reserved, even spoke out. I have avoided thinking about my time in the military for far too long. It is time to put them to good use by assisting others. From his corner, Bill grinned approvingly as he listened. I was worried we were in for some problems when I saw you guys show up this morning. Now observe us. Organizing the largest veteran support program that this lake has ever witnessed. A big map of the dock area was pulled out from behind the counter by Jenny. We, Carl and I, identified areas that may be renovated. What are your thoughts on utilizing the boathouse as a starting point, Hammer? Hammer looked at the map very carefully. If I had enough people to help, I could finish it in a month. Get it looking good. Available to veterans who require it, meeting room, kitchen, and peaceful area. Remember the kid who went fishing with the kids? Remember, Derek said. That needs to be addressed as well. As everyone congregated around the map, Sarah observed. Their previous hostility turned into positive energy. Thunder rumbled across the lake, yet nobody paid attention. With a low voice, Staff Sergeant Logan approached her and stood by her side. Do you believe it's possible for us to succeed? Seeing the true worry on his face, Sarah looked across at him. I can tell you right now that you are. Peruse your surroundings. Cooperation among police, veterans, motorcyclists, and members of the community. More than just pulling it off, that is. There's change happening here. Unconsciously caressing his arm where Sarah had knocked him down earlier, Duke joined them. The outcome of this day is still unbelievable to me. Seemed like trouble when I came here. Rather, I discovered my purpose. The wars we avoid are sometimes the ones that end up being the most fruitful. Okay, Sarah said. Mike raised his notebook to get everyone's attention. We received a draft of our mission statement. The Iron Veterans, channeling their strength into service, unite in friendship, understanding, and active support for our military community. As if to allow the words to sink in, the room went silent. Logan started the conversation. Our current identity is that. Our identity is defined by that. While taking notes on her phone, Officer Collins glanced up. Department has just given their clearance. In addition to offering official assistance for your events, we can also assist with security training and fundraising. Bill interrupted to mention fundraising. Next week is the annual supper of my VFW chapter. The community should meet the new Iron Veterans, in my opinion. Demonstrate that the transformation is taking place. After retrieving a large whiteboard from storage, Jenny began to write on it. We should schedule some dates. When can we begin the renovation? What is the scheduled date for our inaugural Veterans Fishing Program? Everything must be coordinated. Each person contributed their skills as the planning proceeded with military precision. Duke surprised everyone by displaying an innate ability for directing the children's program, Mike arranged administrative duties, and Hammer laid out the designs for the building. Do you realize the feeling this evokes in me? Sarah addressed the group as a whole, reiterating the importance of mission preparation and Special Forces members utilizing their individual strengths to achieve a shared objective. The difference this time, Logan retorted, is that rather than getting ready for battle, we're constructing something. The rain was pounding against the store windows as the storm outside intensified, yet within, the mood was one of warmth, purpose, and possibility. Sarah had one more announcement to make. I would like everyone to take a moment to explain why they are truly here before we wrap up today's agenda. Focus on why this is important to you rather than what you intend to do. Nothing moved in the room. The first to speak was Duke, whose voice was low and steady. I hope this may spare another family the pain my brother and I endured. Derek trailed behind. In the interest of my sister who is serving abroad and her children, who are hungry for positive examples in their lives. Each person's tale deepened their dedication to the cause as they recounted their unique connection to the purpose. No one in the store was unmoved when they finished. Sarah stated emphatically that this is where you truly shine. I don't care about the leather, the bikes, or the tough man persona. Here it is, the pledge to do something greater than oneself. This is the manifestation of true authority. The storm was passing, and the party exited from the bait shop to see the lake changed as the sun broke through the clouds. As if nature were mirroring the transformation that had taken place that day, the river glistened with a newfound purity. Jenny gestured across the lake, where a rainbow of hues stretched across the surface. Witnessing her unexpected new friends take in the scene, Sarah thought it was a great omen of a fresh start. With an air of authority that had been absent earlier in the day, Logan rose to his feet. "I have something to say to everyone before we leave, Staff Sergeant." As Logan removed his leather cut and held it thoughtfully, the company crowded around. "When we came in this morning, we felt like we were unique. Anxiety spying other people was a sign of mental fortitude. None of us will ever be the same after seeing Staff Sergeant Carter's demonstration of true strength." The other motorcyclists trailed behind Duke as he stepped to stand next to him. They formed a circle around Sarah and took turns removing their incisions. Logan went on to say that these wounds used to stand for terror. They will stand for service starting today. These will serve as a constant reminder of our strength lesson from this morning whenever we put them on. There was an affirmative nod from Sarah. The most physically formidable fighters aren't necessarily the most skilled. They are the ones who have the key to establishing harmony. He was followed ahead by Officer Collins, who had remained to see the situation through. "Unlike in the past, my division will be keeping tabs. We'll be keeping an eye out for ways we might provide a hand and rally behind your endeavors." Experience shone through in Bill's voice as he joined in. "You also have VFW support. Not by attempting to intimidate, but by being open to change, you guys displayed true bravery today." Tom, who had been there through it all, stood up from where he normally did. "After 30 years of fishing from this dock, I've witnessed many sunrises and changes, but this one is truly unique." While distributing the last batch of coffee, Jenny dabbed at her eyes. "I was frightened when I saw you all standing there this morning. What this place turns into is something I am eagerly anticipating." Carl chimed in with his 2 cents after coming back to see how things were going. "Monday is the start of the boathouse renovation. Several other veterans have already called to offer their assistance. And I will be here," Sarah declared with conviction. "Throughout, but not in a leadership capacity, rather, as an advisor to you. Go ahead and accomplish this task." Logan glanced at his workers before returning his gaze to Sarah. By reaching into his bike's bags, he mentioned the last task we needed to complete for the day. The iconic patch of the Steel Viper's insignia was extracted by him. "It is time to create something fresh, something that recognizes our evolving nature." Mike, who is always well prepared, had drawings done in advance. Merged the snake with the medical personnel, and added symbols representing power and service. "Do you have any opinions?" As members of the group offered feedback on the design, it iterated until it reflected everyone's new self. There was a birth to the Iron Veterans. "We are going to begin seriously," Logan declared. "Renovation planning, program development, community outreach. On the other hand, we recall its origins today. What a wake-up call it was when someone had the guts to confront us." Sarah expressed her disapproval by shaking her head. "I merely demonstrated the pre-existing conditions. The bravery to adapt. That was your idea." Duke stayed behind when the rest of the gang dispersed, arranging to meet again the following day. In a low voice, he thanked the staff sergeant. "Thanks for realizing we had something redeemable to offer, and for the arm lock that finally made me see reason." According to Sarah, that is what the Special Forces taught her. To every problem, there is more than one answer. The best one doesn't always include conflict. It's all about changing. There was a noticeable absence of aggressive revving and frightening displays when the motorcyclists got on their bikes. They politely and silently got on their bikes. Before leaving, Logan glanced over at Sarah. "Staff Sergeant, I will see you tomorrow." As Sarah beheld the lake, which had once served as her refuge and was now taking on new significance, a grin spread across her face. "Not going to miss it." Lots of people to influence and a lot of lives to fish for. As the others rowed out, the late afternoon light shining on their leather cuts, Jenny stood at Sarah's side on the pier. "I seriously thought this was going to be the worst day ever when they rolled up this morning." "Rather," Sarah responded by releasing her line into the glistening water for a final cast. It was the start of something truly remarkable. Joining them, Tom's wrinkled visage exuded tranquility. "It is quite amusing how things unfold in life. Even the most formidable enemies can sometimes prove to be invaluable allies." Sarah explained this as she watched her line slicing through the mirrored sunset. "That's the thing with fishing. Casting your line is the only way to find out what you're going to catch. Troublesome things don't always end up being the solution that everyone was looking for." There was a noticeable change in the lake's usual cacophony as dusk drew near. The calm serenity that belies hope, rather than the muscular stillness that characterizes fear. Once a site of conflict, the pier had become a symbol of optimism by the end of the day. As Sarah taunted, "We begin constructing something new," she reeled in her line. However, we are reminded today that the most significant triumphs are often the result of avoiding certain conflicts. Long shadows stretched across Mountain Lake as the sun dipped below the horizon. Though deserted at the moment, the pier buzzed with the vitality of new beginnings, power reimagined. A confrontation turned into a revelation in the end. Having the guts to change is more important than being able to frighten someone.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.